Welcome back, AGO friends. One more thought for you as we're journeying through this unprecedented time of COVID-19 and enforced isolation and just giving up all of our normal, all our routines. I wanted to take you to one of my two or three favorite passages in dealing with grief. This is found in the book of Mark, chapter 14, where Jesus is literally on the eve of his crucifixion, and he takes his 12, or minus Judas, into the garden, and then he takes his three friends, Peter, James, and John, to go even a little further in, and then he says, "My soul is grieved to the point of death. Remain here and keep watch while I go over there." So the first thing Jesus does in his lowest point in his life on earth is he acknowledges he is at the greatest amount of grief possible, grieved to the point of death. That's a lot of grief. His great struggles have started. He knows what tomorrow, the crucifixion day, is going to bring, and he's already struggling greatly and didn't want to be alone in his grief. Lesson number one is don't grieve in isolation. Connect with some close friends, some companions in Christ along the way that you know and that you have. Be real and open. That's what Jesus did. And sadly, his three friends nor his remaining 11 disciples were not really up for the job of being with him in his hour of grief. Let's not be like them. So then Jesus goes further away, but not so far that the three couldn't hear him, and they overheard his praying. And he starts struggling, and he starts saying, "Abba, Father." So the first thing in our praying in the middle of grief is to remember who God is. He's our Abba Father, and he's still there, and he still is who he is. He's your Abba Father. He's the Father you've never had and always longed for. He's the one who rules everything and knows everything. He's in heaven, and he's worthy of respect, but he knows us and understands us and loves us. So Jesus begins right away affirming that he has an Abba Father. And then the second thing he does is he says, all things are possible for you. So he not only reminds himself of who his Father is, but what his Father is able to do. God is able to do anything about anything in everything. You're able. It's not a question when you're suffering of God's ability or competence. He is able to deliver us from everything and anything. But often he doesn't. He lets us go through these hard, painful, excruciating events in life, these situations. He doesn't remove them. He's taking us through them. But Jesus rehearses who God is and what he's capable of doing. And all things are possible for you. If possible, I pray, take this cup from me. Now, this is very interesting because what Jesus is really asking the Father for is this. Is there another, less painful way that this job can be done? Is there anything less horrible, any less terrifying and evil and horrific? Is there another way to get the job done that doesn't involve what's to come on the cross? And what's interesting is it's a good prayer request. When we're going through trials, Lord, is there another less painful way this can happen? Couple of thoughts here. First of all, God always chooses the minimum pain necessary to do the job he wants done, to work the work he wants to work in us and through us. Suffering is never random, nor is it ever overkill, the more than is needed for God to do what he wants to do. And that's an interesting insight because Jesus is saying, okay, is there anything less here? Is there something less painful, less excruciating? And the implied answer from the Father is, no, my son. There is no other less painful way. This is the only way and the minimum amount of pain needed to get the job of redeeming all humanity, of saving you and saving me, is what Jesus is understanding. It's not purposeless suffering, it's redemptive suffering. It's for a purpose. And this is the minimum needed to accomplish that mission. And it's only after Jesus understands and receives that answer that he comes to that final resting place. Okay, not my will, your will be done. We often want to hurry to the not my will, your will be done, to be super spiritual and get to that place right away. But the truth is, that's the destination. That's not the starting place. There's process, acknowledging the grief, rehearsing who God is and what he's able to do, asking him in all humility, can we find a less painful way to get this done? And then when you wrestle and you hear, no, my son, there is no less painful way. This is the minimum necessary to do what has to be done in and through you, and it might be even about somebody else watching. You never know. And then we come to the place, okay, if that's the minimum, if that's what it's going to take, okay, your will, not my will, be done. So wrestle in prayer with your greatest sorrows, your most tormenting and difficult issues. If you follow the same pattern of Jesus, you will end up in that strong place, because once Christ was there, there is no sign when in the horrors that happened to him all that next day that he ever flinched or wavered or lost sight of this purpose for which he was suffering, which was the minimum needed to do what only he could do, what only God could do in that crucifixion ordeal for our redemption. So keep that in mind. Make that a pattern for your own wrestlings with God. It's a great pattern. Jesus models it, and it will serve you well.